everyone. So I am Dr. Marie Balancic. I'm from the Centre for Cancer Research here at the MHTP. And on the behalf of the Student Recruitment Committee, we'd like to welcome you to this year's Student Open Day. Not so open, it's a Zoom day. We firstly begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land, the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people who are a part of the Kulin Nation. We pay respects to our elders, past, present and emerging, whose ancestral land it is upon which we are able to provide care to our community. So it would have been wonderful to meet in person, but let's face it, we've probably become a little bit accustomed to Zooms, and this lovely Melbourne weather is so unpredictable. I hope that you are warm and cozy and ready to settle in and hear from some of our wonderful researchers here at the MHTP. So you'll notice tonight you have doctors, you have professors, and you have heads of the Research Institute who are gathering what is after hours, it's 5:30 on a Monday, to tell us why the MHTP is the best place for you to begin your research career. And when you think about it, it really speaks volumes about the great place that we have the opportunity to work at. And we hope that we'll be able to convince you too that this is a great place to further your studies. So there'll be two opportunities for questions, but if at any time you feel the need for a question or something pops into your head, you can pop it into the chat. We have two student representatives who will be able to answer the questions. And I'm sure after the session you may have further questions. You can contact the people that are listed in the student information booklet. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Ebeling, who is the acting head of the School of Clinical Sciences here at Monash. And I'll flip through his slides.
Thank you. Well, it's great that you've all joined us tonight, and we're going to tell you what a great place the School of Clinical Sciences is to do your research. And this is where it is. It's just across the road from the university, and we have Monash University, the Translational Research Facility, the Hudson Institute, right next door to Monash Children's and Monash Medical Centre. Next slide, thanks.
There's a slight delay on my slide moving over, of course. Oh. Good.
So we've got this research building where we have state-of-the-art platforms, including a clinical trial centre and human imaging platform. And we've also got other research platforms as well as many research centres within this building. But the important part of this location is that clinicians and basic scientists work side by side. And this is really where we can do translational research. Next slide, thanks. So we have partners with the university, the Hudson Institute and Monash Health, and we really want to deliver outstanding healthcare education and world-class research. And importantly, all students are enrolled in Monash University via my school, the School of Clinical Sciences, but we all work together on this site. Next slide, please. The School of Clinical Sciences is big. It has 8 academic departments, 5 research centres, and the Hudson Institute of Medical Research. And we have 3 disciplines only found at the School of Clinical Sciences. This is obstetrics and gynecology, paediatrics, and molecular and translational sciences. So we cover the cradle to the grave. So hopefully not the grave too often. Now, we have over 1,000 publications a year. We have every medical discipline covered. We have a growing number of HDR students, and I think it's over 220 now. And our annual budget is $150 million. So we are big. Next slide, thanks. So one of the highlights is our research income, which has really grown quite exponentially since 2016 to 2021. And we have a lot of success with Category 1 Australian competitive grants. And you can see that the total research income is about $62 million now. So we've been very successful at attracting research income. which means we can support research projects and research students. Next slide, please. And we're also very good at research training, and this is shown by the popularity in SCS graduate research students, which has only increased over time and now stands at over 180 FSOL or 280 students. So it's a large number, and we've got an upward trend despite the disruption posed by COVID recently. Next slide, please. Now, I think what we have got that's special is having clinician-scientist collaborations as a lived experience. And this is Jake Short's lab, which shows a typical SCS research team of scientists and clinicians, which is led by a hematologist, Jake on the left there. And this is true for many disciplines. And now, can a basic scientist flourish at MHTP? Well, this is Connie Wong, who I recruited from the School of Biomedical Sciences about 5 years ago now. And she was successful in getting the 2019 CSL Centenary Fellowship of $1.25 million over 5 years, which is incredibly prestigious. And she's also involved in managing our research high degree students. So she puts back in what she's received from SCS, and we're very proud of her as an example. Next slide, please. So we have an unlimited scope of medical and scientific domains. They're all shown here, but some of the leading research groups and centres are shown on the right, and that includes the Centre for Inflammatory Diseases with the Rheumatology Lupus Group, Neuroinflammation Research Group, a leukocyte trafficking group, and Regulatory T-cell Therapies Research Group, which is very innovative and looking at these approaches for both immunology and cancer. We have the Monash Centre for Cardiovascular Research and the Victorian Heart Institute, the Stroke and Aging Research Group, the Behavioural Neuroscience Lab, Blood Cancer Therapeutics Laboratory, my Bone and Muscle Health Research Group, and the Ritchie Centre, which concentrates on children's health and is a centre with the Hudson Institute. So we have research platforms, as I mentioned before, in this new building, and that includes bioinformatics, cell therapies, flow cytometry, functional genomics, histology, mass spectroscopy, medical genomics, microimaging, and the Monash Biobank, as well as an advanced bone imaging laboratory. Next slide, please. So we have a huge variety of honours projects at SCS, and these are shown here. And we also have been very successful at getting the Molly Holman Award for Dr. Annie Langston Cox. And Annie is the third SCS recipient of this prestigious doctoral award in the last 4 years. And this is for the best PhD thesis at the university. So this just shows the quality of the research that's undertaken by our research students at SCS. And next slide. So the other thing is that we have high impact publications, and here we just have 4 New England Journal papers, which is pretty good, and that's all been since 2020. So if you want to publish in the best journals and have the best supervisors, I think you should come to SCS, and we're going to hear a lot more about them today. So thank you very much for listening.
Hello, everyone. My name's Graham Poglaze. I'm delighted to stand in for our director, Elizabeth Hartland, who's unable to attend today. So I'm representing the Hudson Institute, which is an independent research institute with obviously very strong links with Monash University. And in fact, many of us have joint appointments between the two. Our vision is to improve human health through groundbreaking collaborative medical research discoveries and the translation of these to real-world impact. Within the Hudson Institute, we have 45 research groups consisting of about 440 staff and students. We currently have 176 students, 125 of these being PhD and 50 honours students. And you'll see that we regularly publish a number of research publications, over 250 a year. And importantly, a significant proportion of these publications have students as first author. Next slide, please. As Professor Ebeling mentioned, we are located in one of Melbourne's largest scientific research and medical innovative hubs, which is a major site for biomedical research translation, as well as transformative healthcare. And Hudson is located just down here. And we also occupy rooms or floors, I should say, within the translation research facility, again, as Professor Ebeling pointed out. So what do we do? Our research really spans the entire width from discovery research through to translation, clinical trials, and importantly, into assessing the health outcomes of those clinical trials, and then implementation of those into clinical practice with the goal of delivering better health outcomes for patients. Next slide, please. Our research themes really span 5 specific areas of medical need, being inflammation, reproductive health and pregnancy, infant and child health, cancer, and hormones and health. Next slide, please. We're also well renowned for pioneering new treatments across a number of different diseases or therapeutic approaches to human diseases, and these include cell therapies, precision medicine, immunotherapies, as well as microbiome medicines. And finally, the final slide, our students. We have a really fantastic group of students, a really thriving student environment, which is really led by the Hudson Institute Student Society. And their real goal is to create a positive social and academic environment, which enables these students to really excel in their research degrees. The students have very regular dumpling nights and video nights and trivia nights, as well as a regular student retreat, which allows them to not only showcase their research, but as well as creating time to mix and mingle together and hopefully establish really strong friendships and collaborative links that will last their entire research journey. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kate Loveland. I'm head of graduate research at the School of Clinical Sciences, and I also run a research lab. Oh, that was quick. Okay, so what will you get from if you choose to do your research training at our precinct? Well, I guess one of the things that is pretty obvious, you'll get a qualification that shows you're highly skilled in biomedical research, whether it's an honors degree or a master's or a PhD, and that's what we're here to discuss today. Now, some of our students are already highly qualified clinicians or allied healthcare practitioners, and some are coming out from an undergraduate degree and entering honors and maybe entering essentially a professional world for the first time. Whatever level you're at, you will gain some knowledge and capacity for critical thinking, writing, and speaking. And that's because usually each discipline area has its own bespoke style, and there's another level of depth that you can go to by applying yourself and working around really smart, nice colleagues who are around to help you out. So you'll get training in these very fundamental professional areas of thinking, writing, and speaking, but you'll also get training in the state-of-the-art research platforms we heard about earlier from Professor Ebeling, and you'll have hands-on exposure if that's what you like. You will also be exposed to people that are using them, and that's a great way to help you think about making discoveries and learning how to use research platforms, or maybe you'll be someone who would like to be able to build them. So there's a lot of opportunities for personal development here. Essentially, you'll be surrounded by colleagues who are devoted to improving human health and well-being. So if you're prepared for a challenge that can prepare you for the real world and also give you firsthand experience with the world of discovery and clinical research, you might want to think about doing some science with us at this precinct. So come along to have a look at the book if you haven't already. If we could look at the next slide, thanks. It's just a reminder that we have quite a broad diversity of science. You've heard that articulated already. Within the School of Clinical Sciences, which is where all the students enroll, You may do your research within the Hudson Institute and one of the centers, or you may do it in one of the departments or centers that are listed on this slide. You really have to think about what interests you and what skills do you want to learn and do you want to acquire. And you've got a lot of options here. So I would argue that what you're going to be doing is thinking, what do I want to learn more about? And if it's important to you, how do I learn how to have an impact with my research? I think for a lot of us, that's been a motivation for a decade-long career as a discovery scientist or clinical researcher. Practical level, you'll want to be asking yourself and your supervisors and your team that you're thinking about working with, how often will I be meeting with my supervisors? Are they available to me? Who's going to help me with my writing and presentation skills? Who's going to teach me how to do experiments or collect and analyze data? So you'll need to speak to people in the group that you're interested in working with, and then go in for a visit and see how people interact. Do they have regular meetings? Are others in the team doing interesting projects? That helps make it a lot more fun for you. And finally, there's a really important practical question. What hours am I expected to attend? What other seminars and coursework do I have to do? This is really important, particularly at the honors year, where 40% of your assessment is based on non-research components. But even as a PhD student, you have to negotiate with your supervisory team, and I'd suggest you do it at the start. What kind of work ethic or style of working is related to the actual research that you're going to be involved with? Because for some, it's quite flexible, and for others, it's not. So make sure you have the same expectations. Okay, so if you want to do honors, where you already know we have about 30 students working across our many different departments this year, and we've had up to 60 in the past. Most of the students working here are either enrolled in the BMS, the Faculty of Medicine, or the Bachelor of Science through the Faculty of Science. Both of the units have similar but slightly different entry requirements, and some students are eligible to enroll in either unit. So it has to do a bit with your own personal background, and it may have to do with your grade point average, so what your marks are. All honors units, they're very similar though. Coursework assessments comprise 40% of your final mark, and the research project is 60%. So if you want to do honors, find a supervisory team with a project that interests you. You can talk to more than one. Interview 2 or 3. Make sure you're polite enough to let them know you're checking around. But if there's one you're really keen on, check if that project's available, go and visit and talk directly to the staff and students, and especially if you can, previous honor students. You might find a lot of them have stayed on to do a PhD. Make sure it's a good fit for your needs, your style, and your background. And if you're excited, then sign up. So again, just to remind you, BMS honors enroll through the Hudson or the School of Clinical Sciences in the Faculty of Medicine, and BSc honors enroll through the appropriate department or discipline. So again, that's depends on your background and your ambitions. So for honors, here's the next slide, tells you the calls for enrollment take place in October through November for semester 1 in 2023, and in June and July for next year if you want to enroll mid-year. And the contact names and details for the conveners and co-conveners and the honors administrator are listed here. They'll certainly be in the materials supplied to you, but if you want to just jot this down, feel free. So if you've already been through honors or you're finishing your honors degree and you're thinking, oh, I might like to keep going, well, certainly you might want to stay with the team you're working with, and you might want to apply to do a PhD. If you're not sure and you need some more research experience, you might want to do a master's first if you haven't already done honors. And those things all work well, and we can help you figure out where you're appropriately placed. But you need to find a team and a project that excites you. And in this case, you're committing 2 to 4 years of your life to learning about a particular topic and working with a team. So make sure it's a good fit. Make sure the expectations are aligned. And for this, you apply online through Monash Graduate Research Organization website. You have to complete English proficiency in research qualifications check and complete an expression of interest. So your supervisor must agree in advance to support your application. They will check your research and academic referees. And there's also specific rounds if you require a living stipend, or for domestic students, or a living stipend and a tuition payment. That would be for international students. And the timing of those are listed here, and that information is freely available. So for PhD students, you'll also be required to undertake some extra training, different from just your research. You'll take a translational research coursework and complete 2 coursework units that will give you really in-depth background. If you can also choose instead to take professional development modules, which are shorter training modules, and they give you a range of choices. So those are the opportunities for you to extend yourself as a PhD student, but those training opportunities are also available to master's student. So finally, I'd just like to mention that we do have a lot of students here. It's been growing and growing and growing. We have over 250 graduate research students, and half of them are clinicians or allied healthcare professionals. I think that's a good sign that we have a lot of smart people that are involved in learning even more, and they'll be your colleagues if you enroll here. I know Professor Ebeling boasted about our PhD students winning the top thesis excellent prize for the faculty in the faculty in 3 of the past 4 years, and also 2 of our PhD students won first place in the faculty-wide 3-minute thesis competition this year and last year. So we know we're doing something right. And some of it is just because we have amazing students, but I also think it's because we have terrific supervisors. So I'll hand over now to the head of the vice president of the School of Clinical Sciences student group, which has the name of HIS. Liam, you've just been elected.
Yes. Thanks, Kate. Hopefully hearing it from the heads has already convinced you to come on board with us. But I'll do my best for those of you still on the fence. I'm Liam, and I'm a first-year PhD student in the Stroke and Aging Research Group, and I'm here to give a bit of a student insight into the MHTP. Next slide, please. You could probably keep clicking through and next as well. Yeah, that's good. So it always helps to give a bit of background, so I'll run you through how I got to the MHTP. I did my Bachelor of Science at Monash, where I was fortunate enough to do a 3rd-year research project that then became my honours. And I know a lot of you are looking towards the MHTP for an honours project. And while I didn't do mine here, I can only say I've heard very, very good things from friends who have. And I can also mention some really important things to having a great honours. The first is find a good supervisor. They are your lifeline and your mentor, and there are plenty at the MHTP. And they also sometimes buy you coffee. The people in the lab are also really important and can make life a lot easier. I was fortunate enough to have a PhD student support me in my research. She was my saving grace many times, and I see her almost every week as a friend now. When I finished my honours, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do next. Being in the lab was great and I learned so much, but it wasn't for me. Imagine being vegan and then also doing small animal research. I have always liked clinical trials where you get to give the research to people, and that's how I found my current lab. While we cover things like public health and epidemiology, we're also heavily involved in clinical trials spanning from pilot studies to multi-state randomized controlled trials. My supervisors are, and I don't want to toot their horns too much, pretty incredible. And I have supervisors from both Monash and the CSIRO. They always make time for me, give me guidance and support, and are always ready to bat for me, which is so important. From what I've gathered, that's kind of how people in the MHTP work. They're willing to go above and beyond to help you succeed and let you see why research is so fun. Next slide, please. The research undertaken in the MHTP is so expansive, from sheep cesareans to epigenetic dysregulation in cancer. There is a project for basically everyone here, whether it be wet or dry lab, on the computer, or taking blood from patients, which I've found is always conducive to some good Twilight jokes, which they don't always get. I highly recommend perusing the research project booklet to see what's on offer. Everyone who works here enjoys talking about their research, both students and staff. So reach out if something stands out. I'll also quickly address something really important, which is making friends. Research can be really tough, so it's important you have a network to support you. Students here are fortunate enough to have HIS, which organises and hosts events, which you've heard about. This spans from coffee days, networking with early career researchers, having people from industry come and talk to us about their journey, and best of all, yes, dumpling night. It's a great way to meet and network with people in different fields who can also understand and empathise with wanting to scream every time your supervisor asks you to do a Western blot. Hopefully I've drummed up a little bit of interest and made you realise just how good it is to be a student here. And the last thing I'll say is the best thing you can do for your research is to do it somewhere that has the resources, the talent and the people to help you excel. And I can promise you the MHTP has all of those. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our speakers. I guess we have time for some questions, but I know that people are quite shy at asking questions. If there's anything that you think of, you can pop it directly into the chat. As I said, we have some students in the chat that are able to answer any of your questions. And you also have these incredible speakers that are able to answer your questions. So don't feel too shy. We can just make me sit awkwardly here and wait for someone to put their hand up. You'd rather that. So Angela has a question in the chat. If anyone would like to answer it, what would you say are the defining characteristics of MHTP as compared to the Alfred Research Precinct, for example? So I might start by answering. I am an ovarian cancer researcher. I work in the Translational Research Precinct here at Monash. And what that means is I've got a direct bridge that I walk across that's in the hospital. And it means I have direct access to the patients that I am doing my research for. We have so many available resources here. Things that aren't available here are right across the road at Monash University. So you sort of have lots of things in the one place that really help facilitate your research. If anyone else would like to jump in and answer.
I agree with you, Marie. I think the thing that we have that isn't present at the Alfred is this involvement with women's and children's health on the same precinct. And also it is a fairly compact precinct in that our MHTP research is right next door to the hospital, as you said. And then the university is very close if you need to access the university researchers for any component of your project. And obviously the Alfred is a long way away from the university if you need to do that. So I think it's a great location and everybody gets along really well. So there's a strong collaborative team spirit, I would say, is the other defining factor probably for our precinct.
I would like to speak. This is Kate Loveland, and my role gives me the opportunity to meet supervisors and students in every single department. The culture of support and interdisciplinary activity is terrific here. So I guess if you're starting out and you're not exactly settled on what you want to do, it's a great way to survey the arena. There are seminars that are shared across many different disciplines. You can duck in and out. We have student showcase symposium. We have the 3-minute thesis. You have many opportunities to see what your peers are doing with completely different skill set. And I think because the culture is so enriching and supportive, and as you heard about from Liam, the student society is very proactive, very good at integrating people. And we also have a set of coordinators who look after the students at a more local level. So nobody really has to sit and wonder how to solve their own problems. We actually do work quite well as a team. So I know that the people who work out the Alfred Hospital are also very nice and conscientious, but I honestly think that the breadth of our discipline is something that gives you a really good grounding for the real world, where you have to deal with people with lots of different skills and interests.
So we have Diana who has her hand up. Are you able to unmute yourself, Diana?
Yes, I am. And I'd just like to reinforce, I'm Diana Edgerton-Warburton. I'm an emergency physician and I'm a clinician researcher. And I think that's one of the key aspects of the group. I'd just like to emphasize the multidisciplinary nature, but also the translation. So a lot of the research can reach from lab to patient in a very rapid way. So if you're interested in actually doing research that I call passes the sort of so what test, then I think it's a great precinct to work in.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? And Simon, did you want to introduce yourself? Just quickly pop your face on. I don't know if he's ready and beautiful. Simon's always beautiful.
I would love to. It's very noisy where I am at the moment. But yes, as the BMS Honours Coordinator at the MHTP or Hudson SCS, it is fantastic because we have so many students, honours students, who actually have as their supervisors, one who is a clinician and one who is a basic scientist. And so it really does bring a lot of meaning to the projects that you work on. And we see that for so many of the projects that we have going on site. So we look forward to seeing all those applications coming in later on.
Thanks, Simon. So Catherine, we have someone coming up who'll be able to help you with autoimmune diseases and pathology and immunology projects. So just hang around, and I'm sure some of our researchers would love to address your question in the next session. So maybe if we have the next department ready, we can plow on. What do we think? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Yes, good. Okay, and do most of it, sorry, there was just one more question. Do most of the projects use animal models? No, not all of the projects use animal models. You can choose to work with what you feel comfortable working with. I know in our group in particular, we do animal modeling, but there are some people that are not comfortable doing the animal modeling. So we design their projects around what they're comfortable doing. And as Peter has just typed in the chat, there is a lot of clinical research. I think the real focus is on translating your research findings. So, you know, getting those samples from the patients and seeing what's happening in a real-time situation. So yeah, when you find, as Kate said, it's very important to meet with the people that will potentially be supervising you and work with them to find a project that you're comfortable doing and that you can excel at, really. And we've got one more question about touching on an application project process for a student that's completed undergraduate at a different university other than Monash. Kate, could I get you to perhaps?
So I've had honours students from other universities, and you basically have to go through the honours coordinator to arrange that. It's not impossible at all. In fact, it's very common. Yep.
All right, well, we'll push on with Rosemary if you are able to mute yourself, and hopefully I'll be able to drive the slides. Sorry.
Okay, thanks very much, Marie. So good evening, everyone. My name's Rosemary Horn and I'm the Higher Degrees Coordinator for the Department of Paediatrics. And as you've just heard, paediatrics is one of the distinct areas that you can undertake research in if you are located at the MHTP. At Monash University, you can't do it anywhere else. So for the next 5 minutes, I'd like to show you some exciting opportunities that we have to offer honours students and PhD students who are interested in child health. So the Department of Paediatrics is within the School of Clinical Sciences at Monash Health, and we're located on the 5th floor of the new Monash Children's Hospital, which you can see the picture down below. Fantastic new facility. And we have a dedicated education and training research area for all of our students that you can see there in the middle. We have a team of incredible clinician and scientific researchers, as you can see on the right. We're all very happy and get on together, and we're very approachable. And we provide a crucial link between world-leading research and providing the best clinical care for our children. The next slide, please. So if you visit our website, you'll see that our research themes are divided into 8 areas, and you can click on each of these to find out in greater detail what's involved in each one of them. So our research encompasses studies in babies, including preterm babies, through early childhood, school-age children, and right through to adolescents. We have both basic laboratory research, translational research, and clinical research. And our research covers all aspects of the human body, including the brain, heart, gut, kidneys, and lungs. So if you're interested in the health of preterm babies, you'll be able to spend time in our neonatal intensive care unit, where our program of research integrates both pathogenesis and novel treatments for diseases of the lung, brain, and gut, and the impaired long-term treatments for neurodevelopmental outcomes, which are very common in these vulnerable infants. And we aim to improve the outcomes of all these babies. If you're interested in sleep, can you go back, please? If you're interested in sleep or sleep disorders, you can take part in studies with the Melbourne Children's Sleep Centre. And the Melbourne Children's Sleep Centre is the only dedicated paediatric sleep laboratory in Victoria, and we see over 1,000 children annually. So sleep is critically important, and it affects both cardiovascular and mental health, behaviour, and the ability of children to learn. We also have state-of-the-art simulation centre, which focuses on simulation-based medical and surgical education, and is developing innovative new technologies to train health professionals both nationally and internationally. There's also the opportunity to participate in prospective and retrospective clinical trials, investigating common conditions in children, and to work with national and international organisations promoting paediatric global health. And so working with our neuropsychologists, we have projects aimed at optimising and improving care for children with autism and cerebral palsy and their families. The next slide, please. So if you head to our website, you'll also be able to see the individual details of individual research projects. You'll be able to find out about our supervisors, about the current and past student experiences and the pathways they've had to their degrees. You'll be able to look at student publications, and there's a direct link to Supervisor Connect and details of how to apply. If you know the next click. So I hope that I've shown you that whatever aspect of child health you're interested in, we have the project for you. And we aim to have all our students publish their research in international peer-reviewed journals, and this will benefit both your career and the research to which you've been carrying out. And so for leading into the next presentation, many of our projects are jointly run with the Ritchie Centre, and you'll hear about these from Professor Susie Miller. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Rosemary. It's really nice introduction. And bit of a teaser for what the Ritchie Centre is all about. My name's Susie Miller and I'm the head of the Ritchie Centre. The Ritchie Centre is Australia's preeminent research centre for studying complications that impact maternal health, the health of the unborn baby, that's the fetus, or infant health. The aim of the Ritchie Centre is to improve the health and wellbeing of women, babies and children, and this is implemented through studies spanning basic physiology through to clinical trials, the identification of mechanisms that underlie injury, and the development of novel treatment strategies. We use a range of different means to study women's, children's and infant health. And these range from preclinical studies using animal models of compromised situations through to epidemiological studies in pregnant women and in non-pregnant women and also babies, right through to studies in those populations themselves in women and babies. I'm just going to spend the next couple of minutes giving you a little teaser basically of of the research projects that you might find in the booklet. I urge you all to look at the Ritchie Centre booklet of student projects and you'll see listings of whether or not they might be appropriate for honours, masters or PhDs. And I'm just going to give you a little insight into the people that are the right people to touch base with if you're interested in a particular area. These people span clinicians and researchers, so just speak to as many people as you can with something that interests you. We've got studies in women's health, in genomics, diagnostics, and novel targets for endometriosis. We study endometrial organoids. We study bioengineered materials and stem cells for pelvic organ prolapse, which is a significant complication and problem in women's health. We study many aspects of pregnancy, both normal pregnancy and what happens when things go wrong in pregnancy too. We really have a really in-depth research program looking at trying to reduce stillbirth rates in Victoria, and we've had success in this area, which has been really impressive, led by Dr. Miranda Davies-Tuck. We're looking at new therapies for preeclampsia, and we also are really interested in placental structure and function and how this can impact pregnancy, and also what it tells us about the pregnancy. What are the clues that it provides us about the health of that pregnancy? Next slide, please, Marie. We've got studies in newborn infants, and Rosemary touched on preterm babies, but we've studied a whole range of complications and situations in newborn infants, exploring the cardiovascular system of the infant at birth. When is the optimum time to clamp the umbilical cord? These are being led by Stuart Hooper and Graham Polglaze, who you heard speak earlier. We're studying the transition to lung breathing at birth and some really neat imaging strategies to look at the lungs at birth using the synchrotron, both here and in Japan as well. We also look at the effects of asphyxia at birth. What happens when something goes wrong during birth and the baby doesn't get enough oxygen? And if you're a particularly small baby, does this complicate this situation? With regards to preterm birth, there's a very wide variety of studies that you might be interested in, particularly looking at the immune system of the premature infant, which we know is impacted by preterm birth. And you could speak to one of the Knowles about those projects. We're looking at novel anti-inflammatory approaches for babies that are born preterm. And we look at preventing preterm brain injury and the progression of preterm brain injury by targeting inflammatory cytokines. And this is being done in both preclinical animal models to look at the mechanisms of injury, also in a clinical trial that's running at the moment, led by one of our fabulous PhD students. Finally, we've got quite a large program looking at stem cells and a variety of different stem cells, ranging from stem cells obtained from the placenta or the umbilical cord, like umbilical cord blood or mesenchymal stem cells, through to exosomes and their effects. You can study these in preterm babies, or you can study them in other complications of health. And I think that's it from me. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kate Loveland. I'm also the head of the Centre for Reproductive Health, and I also head a research group studying testis development and male germ cell biology. So I think most of us know that none of us would have been here if a sperm and an egg hadn't come together to start formation of an embryo. Well, our research is investigating this absolutely remarkable, but also mandatory event for life to occur. What many of us are just learning about is how important environmental exposures are in utero to determining what adult reproductive health will be. So in our center, we actually have a really broad spectrum of projects that are looking at the real nuts and bolts of how sperm form properly. What happens, how does the uterus form, and how does the uterus become receptive to allow an embryo implant? But we're looking in great depth at the fundamental research issues that are arising now in our discipline that are trying to understand why the rates of infertility are increasing worldwide. Why is the male sperm count declining? Why is the incidence of testicular germ cell tumors, cryptorchidism, and hypospadias, dysgeneses that arise from in utero events? Why are these increasing? So a lot of our work is focused on trying to understand the mechanisms that are involved in that. But we also have to go back and study the fundamental events that are required for normal research. I have a PhD student who just finished her thesis and submitted last month, looking at the description of the immune cells that are arising during different stages of fetal testis development and looking at the factors that regulate that. And in Mark Hedger's lab, he has students who are looking at the impact of disruptions to the immune system and how they influence adult male fertility. So we have a broad range of projects and supervisors working on diverse areas. We do use, the very high-end single-cell spatial transcriptomics, mass spectrometry, imaging, proteomics, etc. But really our focus is on the questions of trying to understand the fundamental principles of cell and organ health in order to provide evidence that can be then applied to improve the health care and provide tools that protect fertility. So we have a strong interest in training the next generation of research and healthcare practitioners by providing the evidence that is needed to protect reproductive health. So on the next slide, I've just listed a few of the projects. In the top right corner, there's a picture of some of our students. I think they're all, one's still a student, a couple of still students in there. Several have graduated or handed in their thesis by now. But we have the giant knitted placenta that came to visit our institute. Another feature that you'll probably not find at any other research precinct. I've listed 3 of the projects on offer that I think highlight the breadth of areas that we're interested in, and hopefully one of them will interest you. So Associate Professor Robin Hobbs is an internationally renowned for his work on spermatogonial stem cells, and Dr. Eileen Chan is a senior researcher in his lab that are trying to recruit a student who might help with their work on trying to understand how chemotherapy treatments that men have to undergo at different times of life to treat a tumor, for example, have how they can protect the spermatogonial stem cells so that they can recover, and those men or boys who were the men who were boys when they had their treatment can recover. So recover and sustain fertility. So the methods for that project may include the spermatogonial stem cell cultures that are really highly sophisticated, immunofluorescence, and different kinds of transcript analyses. So please contact Robin if you're interested in that type of project. He's a very kind and energetic person who has a tremendous track record. So there's a new combination here, Dr. Neil Youngson and Harriet Fitzgerald, and this project may not be listed in the book yet, but I know it's going on to Supervisor Connect. Neil has an expertise in epigenetic mechanisms in reproduction, and he has been, he's developed a new project with a student who graduated from the Center for Reproductive Health years ago and went and did an overseas postdoc and is now back working in the Department of O&G, Dr. Harriet Fitzgerald. And they're interested in developing human endometrial organoid cultures to look at how the impact of DNA damage proteins and epigenetic analyses will give them clues as to the increasing risk of endometrial cancer. So that should be quite an exciting honors project. Please contact Neil if you're interested in that. So in another area entirely, Professor Nuzhat Ahmed, who is based predominantly at Federation University in Ballarat, but also has a research base here in the Institute, partnering with Ruth Escalona, who is a recently submitted her thesis, PhD thesis, has a really interesting project on ovarian cancer progression and chemoresistance that is looking at a specific signaling molecule called magmas and looking at it in the context of using cell lines, xenograft mouse models, and phosphoproteome analyses. So she's really keen to use this to develop new strategies for clinical management of ovarian cancer. And she has very strong clinical contacts in her work in Ballarat. So please contact Nuzhat if you're interested in hers. Again, if anybody's interested in research in reproductive health, please contact me or any one of our team members. We'd love to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Mulyato Pangestu from Education Program in Reproduction Development, Department of Obstetric and Gynecology. This evening, I would like to bring you to something different to the other group. EPRD is mainly looking after coursework. We got 3 coursework units, graduate diploma in reproductive science, master in clinical embryology, and also another research master is Master of Reproductive Science. We also run a workshop and short course for professional. As you know, EPRD is one of the first unit set up at Monash University to train people who can work in reproductive field. Monash is well known as a pioneer in IVF in Australia. Also, Monash University team been recognized by NHMRC as a pioneer in IVF in Australia. So what we do in graduate diploma in reproductive science and master clinical embryology, we train people who got a passion or interest in working in reproductive science, like can work as an embryologist in IVF clinic, working in wildlife conservation, also in other parts of medical science related to reproductive biology. During the period from 1987 till now, education program in reproduction development already produced more than 500 graduates, especially master in clinical embryology is kind of the second best course in clinical, the first best course in clinical embryology in the world. We don't have any competitor in Australia. Other competitors are like in the UK or in India, but so far, MCE, since we set it up in 1999, already graduates more than 300 graduates, and they've been working everywhere. Most of them working as embryologists in IVF clinic, in Australia and in the world, and some others now become PhD, become lab manager, lab director. So it's kind of good pathway career if you really interested to work as a scientist or embryologist or helping people to fulfill their dream to build the family. So if you really want to join any of those courses, please contact our course administrator, Dr. Penny Chen. The phone number and email is there. So I hand over to my colleagues, Dr. Fabrizio Horta. He's going to explain a bit more on research within EPRD. Okay, Fab.
Thank you very much, Mulyato. So, at EPRD, we also are currently develop research, and we have a strong collaboration with the industry. Part of the research that we are focusing with a lot of collaboration is in non-invasive metabolic imaging. This type of research, we currently collaborate with the Department of Engineering, and indeed we are developing technologies for measuring the metabolic activity of embryos and gametes, which promise a lot of novelty for assessments of in embryo, especially for embryo selection and improvement of IVF treatments. In the last decades, we have been able to improve quite significantly outcomes in IVF patients. However, in the last decades, this result has stayed very stable. We haven't been able to prove further, and we require improvement on technology for continue improving outcomes. The main two approaches that the industry is actually taking is non-invasive methodologies. One of them is through imaging techniques, and this is one of the current works we have with the Department of Engineering. But we also have currently work with the Department of IT and Data Science through the development of artificial intelligence clinical support decision systems that it could allow the clinicians and the embryologists at the moment of transfer make better decisions to improve the embryo selection and therefore the clinical outcomes of these treatments, and we can improve the treatment outcome finally. Next slide. So also we develop research in other aspects of infertility. Idiopathic infertility is very important. Most of the infertility that we manage or the patients when they arrive in the clinics is actually unknown. We don't really know the reasons. So we also are trying to understand what it could be the reasons behind. We try to identify biomarkers of infertility in these cases, such as sperm DNA damage. We also collaborate with the Department of Engineering for sperm selection. We have a strong collaborator, Dr. Reza Nosrati, that works in the microfluidic space. And also we work in reproductive genetics and cryopreservation. Next slide. Importantly, we are connected to industry. We have a strong collaboration with Monash IVF. Recently, also we have collaboration with City Fertility, and also the sector like societies such as Fertility Society of Australia and New Zealand, and other industry. So yeah, definitely you are quite welcome to do research with us. And certainly please contact us. You will be really welcome to develop the most novel research in this space. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Dr. Jacqueline Pearson, and I am representing the Centre for Innate Immunity and Infectious Diseases, or CIIID as we call it, and we are embedded within the Hudson Institute. So at CIIID, we discover and model how early immune responses, or the innate immune response, regulates disease, and we translate our findings into practical outcomes that impact on relevant global health issues. So inflammation is a really central theme at CIIID, as I've put it up here in the middle. It underpins hundreds of health conditions, and it contributes to more than 50% of deaths worldwide and an escalating burden of disease. And the COVID-19 pandemic alone has really illustrated to the world how important inflammation research is and will remain. So the immune response is important in every disease you'll study as a scientist or a doctor. A successful innate immune response can resolve infectious diseases and eliminate cancer, whereas a poorly regulated immune response causes chronic inflammatory diseases with multi-organ impact. So at CIIID, we're made up of 12 labs with around 120 staff, and around 47 of those are students. And as you can see here, I've put it students based at the bottom of this pyramid, and I really think this is because great students underpin our great work at CIIID. So we are world leaders in research on innate immunity, and we can boast that we're Australia's largest team of innate immunity researchers under one roof, and we really are internationally renowned for our expertise and being this hub of innate immunity. We perform high quality discovery research using the latest technologies, and we translate our research into preventions, diagnostics and treatments, and we publish in the world's top impact journals. So what I've got listed here, and this is from the website, so if you go to the Hudson website and you click on inflammation, you will see these areas that we work on. So they are broad. As you can see, we work on microbial aspects of innate immunity, so antimicrobial resistance. We work on gastroenteritis and microbiome in health and disease. So I'm personally a microbiologist, so I focus on gastroenteritis and antimicrobial resistance. But we also have world leaders in areas such as inflammation and cancer. So we're looking at stomach cancer, ovarian cancer. We have a lot of labs that work in chronic inflammatory disorders, such as inflammatory bowel disease. So we have clinician researchers leading those teams. We have experienced virologists working on aspects of COVID-19, inflammation, influenza, and also teams working on inflammatory disorders, including lupus and pneumonia. So we have this really broad range of research, but what's great about the CIIID is that a lot of these teams work together. So we collaborate with each other, and we also collaborate across different centres within SCS and within Hudson Institute. So it's a really fantastic place for collaborative research, because we do that very basic research that underpins multiple either inflammatory disorders or infectious diseases. Next slide, please. So before I just finish off on this slide, if you can notice that down the bottom of the slide there, I've got a link to a podcast that the CEO of Hudson did on inflammation. So if you wanted to copy that and have a listen, it's a really, really good podcast to listen to. It gets you very excited about the kind of research we all do. And my name and email is there in case anyone wants to personally contact me about specific projects within CIIID. So our main focus is to perform top quality discovery-based research. Discovery-based research is really what we do. And we also look towards developing treatments to prevent or alleviate inflammation-driven diseases. We have research projects with impact. And so we're working on really current things that are important globally: COVID-19, flu, cancer, obesity, diabetes, IBD, gastroenteritis, lupus, COPD, and we have a lot of clinical researchers, ones that lead groups and ones that work within groups as well. And I've put here skills. We have, you'll learn a lot of skills within this centre. So anything from molecular biology, signal transduction, protein interaction, cell biology, immunology. We have a great hub of people that work in microbiology. So we have bacteriologists, we have virologists, and that's quite unique to the CIIID. We have our own building. We have a lot of facilities around being microbiologists. And also we have structural biologists. And if you're not one of those people who likes to work at the bench, we also have labs that do functional genomics and bioinformatics and contribute greatly to research projects. So we have a lot of experienced supervisors that have produced top quality students. Of our 12 labs, 4 of them are female lab heads. So if some people feel more comfortable with a female lab head, we have really great female lab heads. You get really great hands-on supervision at CIIID and a lot of time in the lab, which is really exciting. We really focus on your career development, so looking at your CV, giving great presentations, getting your writing up to scratch. And we're a very inclusive and diverse department. So you're really looking at getting a lot of cross-disciplinary training at CIIID and really contributing to translational research and commercial engagement. So you can see a bunch of happy students here from CIIID. And just to finish off, I'm going to just mention that we have one of our lab heads, Associate Professor Michael Gontier, has very recently partnered with industry, and he is developing the next generation of anti-inflammatory molecules to blunt toxic inflammation in severe COVID or flu or autoimmune disorders. And some of his research has already led to a phase 1 clinical trial in COVID-19 patients. So we're really having that impact in the clinic as well as doing great basic research. So feel free to contact me. We're a very open, friendly department, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Connie Wong. I am the Deputy Director of Centre for Inflammatory Diseases, or CID in short. We are physically located at multiple sites at the MHTP, but we are joined with a single mission that is to undertake the research at the highest standards into how, and try to understand how inflammatory diseases come about so that new therapeutics can be developed. Research at the CID spans basic experimental biology, clinical research, all the way to clinical practice. Now, because of this, researchers at CID use both clinical and laboratory-based experimental techniques to explore the mechanism of inflammation. So why are we interested in inflammation? Jacqueline done a fantastic spiel why we are doing what we do. Basically, inflammation is everywhere. It affects a large proportion of our community, and it often underlies a lot of well-known diseases, some of which are shown here on the right. Inflammation can severely affect people's quality of life, and if left untreated or inappropriately treated, it can be fatal. Now, clearly, there's still a lot that needs to be done in inflammation research, and at CID, we work collaboratively from understanding the fundamental biological processes of inflammation all the way to designing new therapies to be tested in the clinics with the ultimate aim to improve people's life. Next slide, please. Now, what I want to do with this slide here is not only to show you some very friendly faces that are part of CID, but also demonstrate the breadth of knowledge, the depth of expertise, and the diversity of research area we cover. With the time constraints, of course, I won't be going through each and every single organ systems listed here, of which the research projects are available or being offered at CID. But I'll point you to the website at the bottom of this slide to encourage you to directly contact supervisors by email and arrange a visit to our center. I can also assure Catherine, I think earlier, who asked about autoimmune diseases, please get in contact. I am fairly certain that we can find you a very interesting project at CID. Now, if I can leave you with one last message, is that CID loves students. We have lots of very experienced supervisors, and as a matter of fact, our director, Professor Michael Hickey, recently won the Dean's Award for Excellence in Postgraduate Research Supervision. And a few of the group leaders you see on this slide were actually students of CID, myself included. And now we are here to supervise and mentor the next generation. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Taylor Bennett, and I'm an immunologist in the rheumatology research group at the MHTP. And if you click through once, please, you'll bring up some more. So our group is made up of senior clinicians and lab-based researchers, and we all have backgrounds spanning across the spectrum of rheumatology, which includes basic immunology, all the way through to people with expertise in clinical trials and the management of clinical data and patient samples. And we combine this expertise in immunology and autoimmunity with the information that we gain from examining clinical data and patient samples to find new therapeutic targets and biomarkers in rheumatological diseases such as lupus. So in the lab, our main focus is to study the role of glucocorticoid-induced molecules in human diseases such as lupus. And so this is an autoimmune disease that causes inflammation and tissue damage in all around the body, in joints, skin, brain, lung, kidneys, and blood vessels. So a really horrible autoimmune disease. So if you flick through to the next slide, please. So glucocorticoids are commonly referred to as steroids, and they're used to treat inflammatory diseases, mainly and in many cases lupus, because of their broad immunosuppressive effects to dampen the immune response. And that immune response, when it's dysregulated, drives disease in autoimmune disease. And so although they provide us beneficial effects in dampening these potent and dysregulated immune responses, their use brings a suite of harmful side effects, such as metabolic side effects, such as obesity and osteoporosis. And so a safer alternative to glucocorticoid use is urgently needed in the clinic. And this is really informed to us by our close collaboration with clinicians in the lab. So if you click through again, please. So through fundamental research, we have been working on building in the lab a greater understanding of the actions of glucocorticoids. So this work now spans translational and clinical research, And through this work, together with our basic researchers such as myself at the bench in the lab, but also the clinicians that we work closely with from the lupus clinic at Monash Health, we've now identified some therapeutic agents that really provide an alternative to steroid use in the clinic. And we're now really gearing towards the commercialization of this research to really provide information to develop a novel drug to address our goal of a glucocorticoid alternative. So if you join our lab, you will be involved in this really exciting research, which is really pushing translationally towards this commercialization outcome to help people who have lupus, but also a whole suite of other autoimmune and inflammatory diseases who would benefit greatly from a glucocorticoid alternative. Please contact us if you have any questions or if you would like some more information, and you'll be very, very welcome to join our lab in this fight against glucocorticoid use. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name's Jason Kane. I'm a research group head in the Centre for Cancer Research. And within the centre, we undertake discovery research, translational research, as well as clinical research. And really, the overriding goal of all of the research programs in our centre is to understand underlying cancer biology so that we can identify new, more effective and safer therapies. And in order to do this, we utilise a large range of cutting-edge technologies, some of which are highlighted on this slide. And this includes phenotypic imaging of both tumour cells and the tumours as a bulk. We have a very large functional genomics program utilising CRISPR genome editing. And within the centre, we have a number of really exciting resources, which include whole genome arrayed guide RNA libraries. We also have a number of pooled CRISPR libraries as well that are specific for various aspects of biology, whether it be whole genome, epigenetics, kinases. We also have quite a large high throughput drug screening program or capability using robotics. And we have about 5 different commercial drug libraries, which total probably about 3,000 different drugs that are either FDA approved or in late stage clinical trials. And that's not just for cancer, these are also for other diseases, but we can repurpose these drugs for cancer. And we also utilise a lot of next generation sequencing techniques, whether that's looking at mutations within tumours, looking at gene expression, looking at epigenetics or other techniques that we introduce into the department as needed. We're also very strong at modelling cancer in animal models. We have many different types of animal models of cancer, whether they're genetically modified mouse models, patient-derived xenograft models, and we have both immunocompetent and immunocompromised mouse models of different cancers as well. We also have a lot of expertise in proteomics as well as gene therapy. A lot of the work we do in the centre involves cancer cells, so we do a lot of work in the lab growing cells in the incubator and on plastic and doing experiments with those. We're also interested in cancer biomarker development, transcriptomics, and of course, immuno-oncology is really a growing field within cancer research and cancer therapy. And also we have expertise in structural biology and cryo-EM. Next slide, thank you. So this is just a brief summary of the main labs within the Centre for Cancer Research and the lab heads. So I won't go into a lot of detail about what each of these labs do. You can look up these lab heads either on the website or within the student booklets. But what they work on, I'll just briefly summarise. So Ron is particularly interested in childhood cancer as well as gastrointestinal cancer. My lab is almost entirely interested in pediatric or childhood cancers, but we do also work a little bit in lung cancer. Dan Goff's lab is primarily interested in stat cancer biology, and he mostly applies that to small cell lung cancer. Catherine works on both adult and pediatric or childhood leukemias. Chunhua is gastrointestinal cancer, George and Jim work on hematological disorders, which include cancer. And then Andrew and Marie both have large programs in ovarian cancer. And then lastly, Wilson, who is a structural biologist, utilises a number of different cancers depending on the questions that he's willing to ask. So as you can see, there's a broad range of research diseases or cancers within the centre, and we apply many of those cutting-edge techniques to all of our research programs in different combinations. So if you're interested in any of the diseases or the techniques, then please get in touch with any of the individual research groups. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Vincent Harley, and I'm a molecular biologist and geneticist in the Centre for Endocrinology and Metabolism, which is the leading Australian centre for clinical endocrinology and endocrine research. We're closely aligned with the endocrinology unit of the hospital, Monash Health, which is Victoria's largest health service. We are 6 research groups, and unusually 4 of us are clinicians running both clinical and laboratory-based research. And so it spans discovery, translational, clinical and population research. And of course, we have vacancies for vacation honours, master's, PhD students in areas from science to informatics and medicine. And we take students from Monash, Deakin and University of Melbourne. Next slide, please. The 6 group areas and heads are firstly in endocrine hypertension, Dr. Jun Yang, and her main question is what is the prevalence of primary aldosteronism and how can we improve diagnosis and treatment? And so her lab does everything from bench and models all the way through to population health. The aim being to identify biomarkers to improve diagnosis and treatment. My lab is the sex development lab. I'm interested in sex differences in common diseases, as well as in very specific gender-based diseases such as intersex conditions and transsex conditions. And my areas are principally developmental biology and genetics. And we also look at sex bias in diseases such as Parkinson's and more recently autism. Rob McLaughlin runs the clinical andrology lab, and his questions are around sperm production and how it's regulated and how it fails, leading to infertility in males, trying to get at the genetic causes of infertility and also around assisted reproduction. Francis Molat is interested in bone research and principally how can we prevent osteoporosis and fractures in young adults with chronic disease. And she looks at a whole range of diseases, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, thalassemias, pregnancy-related bone disorders, kidney and liver disease, and looking at the consequences to bone and how to improve bone health. The hormone cancer therapeutics group is led by Dr. Simon Chu, and he is developing drugs to improve outcomes and direct treatments towards ovarian cancer principally, and also thyroid cancer. And the centre head, Professor Peter Fuller, is focused on steroid receptor biology, asking specifically the mineralocorticoid receptor and how it acts in classic and non-classical tissues. So yeah, we're studying hormones and their complex action through a whole range of organ systems and studying from genetics through to biochemistry, structural biology, translational drug development and animal models through to human population studies, meta-analysis, and some clinical trial work as well. And so if these areas or any of them interest you, please contact us. Our Instagram and Twitters are at CEM_Hudson, or you can contact me or any of the other lab heads if you have any interest. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Associate Professor Costa from Department of Nutrition, Dietetics and Food, also the HCR Coordinator and author. Next slide, please. So within the Department of Nutrition, Dietetics and Food, we have four main research groups, teaching and learning, especially in the form of dietetic learning and clinical outcomes, clinical nutrition, public health nutrition, metabolism, just to give you some ideas of the different projects of each of these groups. So within the clinical nutrition, it encompasses both oncology, pediatrics, metabolic conditions, and the research is all involving the impact of nutritional intervention on these, the development and progression of these diseases. From the public health model, it's got to do with working with industry and with government in implementing nutritional interventions at a national level and local level, especially in rural communities. And there is some focus on the Indigenous population, especially in the northern of Australia, and how public health nutrition interventions are linking into improving health, especially cardiometabolic health. Within the metabolic group, again, we've got a lot of projects looking at nutritional intervention in prevention, a lot of cardiometabolic conditions, but also within that metabolic group, we have a lot of nutritional immunology and exercise physiology and sports medicine in the form of looking at how ultra endurance exercise and the nutritional intervention of ultra endurance exercise can either attenuate health outcomes or exacerbate health outcomes associated with too much exercise. So say too much of a good thing can also be a bad thing. So these are just a few. If any of these interest you, please contact me. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Diana Edgerton-Warburton, an emergency physician, and I'm the medical lead of the Monash Emergency Research Collaborative, where this is just a bit of a change of tack. We focus on pragmatic patient-centred research. Monash emergency departments see a third of the emergency department presentations in Victoria, and we have this cradle to tomb focus across the lifespan. So we have dedicated paediatric emergency research, and more recently a real focus on geriatric emergency research as well. We have key pillars, including emergency critical care, toxicology, public health research, particularly alcohol and drug research, and also a focus on paediatric emergency medicine and the patient experience and health service research. Monash is the leading research university for emergency research in Australia on experts.com. And we really provide this opportunity to undergo multi-centre studies across staying within the Monash emergency departments. What I thought I'd do is just give you a couple of examples of research which has spanned over 10 years, been with some of our incredible students that we've had, and just shown you how our research goes from a patient to national guidelines. The next slide, please. One of our key areas is reducing low value or unhelpful care. And up in the top left, you'll see Charlie. And Charlie was 4 days old when he attended a Monash ED emergency department. His parents were worried because his skin was yellow and he was a little drowsy. And he had an IV inserted and fluids started and he was admitted for phototherapy. Now, this is Charlie in the centre 4 days later after 2 cardiac arrests with SAB bacteremia, which was related to his IV cannula. And it was really Charlie's case that led to this 10 years of research, first around assessing the fact that about half cannulas were not being used in the ED, and then a multimodal intervention with our design partners, which culminated in our research being cited in the recent clinical care standard for the Commission for Safety and Quality. So it's an opportunity to be involved in research that has a policy and guideline focus. Thank you, and next slide. And this is another case of a young Italian waiter called, and we believe at Monash Emergency that as much as possible, anyone who attends the emergency department and has a condition where there's scientific equipoise, they should be involved in a trial. And this was an international trial which was led at Monash Health and Monash University, where we looked at for people with moderate to large pneumothoraces, either treating them conservatively with a watchful waiting and or intervention. And we focused on patient-centered outcomes, and you can see in the bottom left that the conservative arm, not only did people get better in the same amount of time, so they were equivalent, but the things that mattered to the patients were much better in the people treated conservatively. And that's was published in 2020 and led to a change in the therapeutic guidelines. And so we really have a broad range of clinicians who are clinician scientists who are really interested in working with students to go from a case of scientific equipoise or a patient that you might see in the ED to national guidelines. And if anyone's interested, have a look at our webpage or contact me. We're really looking forward to having some fantastic honours students next year. Thank you.
Hi there. So my name is Associate Professor Rachel Hill, and I lead the Neuroscience Research Division of the Translational Molecular Psychiatry research program within the Department of Psychiatry. So we are a very large research group that involves molecular biologists, neuroscientists, psychologists and psychiatrists, all working together to really try to find better treatments for people who are living with a severe mental illness. And the way that we go about doing this is that we follow this sort of translational pipeline of research. So we start by identifying families of patients with a severe mental illness, such as schizophrenia or depression. And we use whole exome sequencing. Sorry, someone needs to mute. So we use whole genome sequencing to identify genetic variants in both patients with a mental illness and their families that might increase risk for the disorder. Or we look for epigenetic changes that might be induced by environmental factors that have caused the disorder. We then look at post-mortem human brain tissue from people who have passed away from a mental illness. And we look to see if these genetic changes associate with changes going on in the post-mortem brain, including cellular or molecular changes. Now, the thing about post-mortem tissue in mental illnesses such as schizophrenia is that we're looking really at the end stage of the disorder. And we actually believe that these disorders might have their origins right as early as prenatal development. So here we use animal models, and we can create transgenic animal models that have some of these genetic variants that we've uncovered in the clinic. And we do a whole bunch of behavioural testing, and we can also take the brains out at various different time points and look at different cellular changes and molecular changes and try to identify new targets for biomarkers for mental illnesses and also for new treatments for mental illnesses that are really all about precision medicine for people with a psychiatric disorder. Next slide, please. So just some examples of some of the projects that we have going on in the lab that follow this pipeline is that we identified in 2019 a new novel mutation in a gene called ARX in a person with schizophrenia. But we weren't quite sure how this gene mutation affects the brain and brain development and how it might be causing schizophrenia in this person. So we created a mutant mouse using CRISPR-Cas9 technology with this ARX mutation, and we found that they're actually quite behaviourally impaired. They've got social behaviour impairments and cognitive impairments. So what we want to do now, and what the project is on offer, is to try to understand what's happening in the brains of these mice and take these brains out at different stages and see what's going on at a cellular level. If you can just click again on the slide. Another example of a project that's going on at the moment and that's on offer is that we found in the post-mortem human brain reduced levels of a molecule called BTC in the brains of people with schizophrenia. And this has never been found before. So we wanted to understand what BTC does in the brain. So again, we created a transgenic animal model that has a loss of beta-cellulin. And we found a number of different behavioural changes, again, increased anxiety and increased fear in the mice. And they also showed cellular changes in the brain, particularly within the dendrites of certain neurons. So now we want to see, okay, we found these behavioural and cellular changes. Can we recover these phenotypes? So we're going to be injecting beta-cellulin directly into the brains of these mice and seeing if we can recover this. And this would be a fantastic new treatment target for people with schizophrenia who have low levels of beta-cellulin. And this is a current project on offer. Just if you can click again on the slide. We also have another project looking at translational attachment research. So we've identified pathways of intergenerational transmission of attachment trauma in the patient-infant relationship. And this is linked to etiology of personality psychopathology and affect dysregulation. So we have a project on offer evaluating early parent-infant interventions in high-risk populations. So if you're interested in any of these projects, please contact me on this email address here. And also just a note at the bottom there, we are actually offering some top-up scholarships for PhD candidates. So all candidates that apply for a scholarship, the Department of Psychiatry are offering an additional $15,000 per year on top of the scholarship. Okay, thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Peter Teen, and I'm the research lead in the Master of Wound Care program. So by way of background, I'm a podiatrist and an active clinician researcher. And in wound care, we're a very small team, and we're based on level 5, block C of Monash Health in the Department of Surgery. So wound care is a truly interdisciplinary profession where nurses, dietitians, podiatrists, occupational therapists, scientists, surgeons, and a number of different physicians all work together to achieve wound healing, and that's often in the face of complex presentations, multiple comorbidities, and all sorts of barriers to deliver care and improve the lives of people with chronic wounds. And there's a huge amount of growth and investment in wound care, which is a growing field and presents a huge global burden. So my research goal is to end avoidable amputation in people with diabetes, and I'm looking for enthusiastic people to join me by making a difference and conducting valuable clinical research in this space. So we have a number of different research projects available at different levels, including honours, masters and PhD, just depending on what you're looking for and what you're interested in. We're very open to tailoring a project to your interests, and we offer a lot of flexibility. We're ideally placed and have a productive working relationship with the High Risk Foot Clinic at Monash Health, as well as a number of other wound clinics across Melbourne. And we have a large project or a large program of research in nutrition and wound care. We're looking at projects such as determining the effectiveness of personalised clinical nutrition for wound healing, weight loss in venous leg ulcer healing. Also, we're looking to determine current practices in nursing, allied health and medicine on dietary advice in wound healing. We also have a program of research in vascular diagnostics of the lower limb. So the use of innovative technology to predict wound healing capacity, particularly in patients with peripheral arterial disease and diabetes. Also determining different vascular thresholds for safety in application of compression therapy. So that's one of the mainstays of venous leg ulcer therapies. We also have a nice little neat project looking at sleep quality and wound healing, looking at the quality and quantity of sleep and how that impacts on patients' healing journeys. And this is probably, I've left this one till last, it's probably the most exciting one. We're working with Dr. Rowan Page, who's from industrial design at the Caulfield campus. He has designed a boot, which you can see in the photo there, which has embedded pressure and temperature sensors, which we are looking to determine if it can be used to prevent wound recurrence. So in people with diabetes in particular, who've recently healed, they wear the shoe as a form of therapy to help prevent the wounds returning, which is one of the big problems we face. So Rowan has worked together with Blundstone to create this shoe, which he's now looking to pilot in some clinical trials. So we're looking for someone to help us with that project as well. So I'd love to hear from you if you're interested in clinical research in wound care. It might not be something you've thought of before, but we're all very friendly and I'd love to hear from you. Just shoot me an email, peterteen@monash. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for sparing your time this evening to hear about some of the wonderful projects that we have on offer here at the MHTP. I think you can sense the enthusiasm from most of the speakers that spoke today, and we're really thankful for these potential supervisors for taking the time to share their enthusiasm towards their projects. And in particular, I'd like to thank the first set of speakers who bared with me while I learnt to drive PowerPoint remotely. It just shows how kind and caring your potential supervisors can be. If there are any questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat. I can read them out, or likewise, feel free to just contact us afterwards. The contact details for the schools are available in the email that was sent to you with this Student Open Day link. I might just wait and see if anyone has any questions. You did so well to begin with, guys. Don't be shy now. Well, I guess we might just wrap it up then. Oh no, okay. In terms of contact the supervisor, I think the best thing for me is you introduce yourself and why you're interested and what they can offer you. So, you know, I've read about your project. I have a particular interest in this particular disease. I'm looking for a project that's going to enable me to, you know, broaden my scientific diversity, I guess, and put into practice some of the stuff that I learned at university. And what do you have on offer? And I think it's really important, you know, you can get a really good vibe when you start talking to someone and see that it's the most, we always say to all of our potential students, it's probably the most intense year that you'll have as a researcher, because you learn so much and you put so much into practice. So it's really important to just have a good connection with the people that will be supervising you. Anyone else? Thanks, Catherine. So relevant elective units, I'm not entirely sure what the electives are for the honours enrolment, and is Kate available? Sorry, Kate. She's on mute. I think that in the student information booklet, there should be details outlining which stream you're able to enroll into and what the units that you're required to enroll in those streams are, but I'm not entirely sure. So you'd have to check that up. Sorry, I can't help you with that question there. If anyone else is online that can jump in, that'd be great. Yeah. So, okay, thank you, sorry. Did you want to answer that question, Kate? Are there any prerequisites or units that you have to do to get into any of these projects?
So at an honors level, clearly to enroll in your specific program, you do have prerequisites. So, you know, you wouldn't take somebody from a arts degree into a science honors project, right? So you have to check with the honors coordinator, absolutely. They're pretty fluid, so there's a will to give people the benefit of the doubt, but you just have to demonstrate you have a suitable background. For master's and PhD, obviously, it's a bit more rigorously scrutinized because it's a bigger commitment on both sides.
And I think it was also in relation to if you were interested in psychiatry, did you have to do psychology as a unit?
Right.
I'm sure Rachel might be able
Yeah.
to.
No, you don't have to do psychology. So we do a lot of neuroscience projects. So if you have a science background, even it's molecular biology or physiology or anatomy, that's perfectly fine.
There was one good question here. If there are two project leaders in a study that you're interested, should you contact both? Likely event is that one supervisor will be the one that replies and the other isn't. So you can copy them both into the email that you're sending when you're trying to contact them. So, and again, don't just reach out to one person, spread yourself around, have a look at what we have on offer. Everyone is clearly very enthusiastic about their work, but it's also about you finding the right fit for your research career. So scholarships on offer for people that are doing masters instead of honours. I know that there are scholarships for regional students, but in terms of Australia,
Research Masters is available, but you wouldn't get a Research Masters candidature unless you already had done some, unless you wouldn't be likely to get a scholarship unless you had already done research, because the scholarships are so competitive. If anybody has specific questions about that, you can send me an email and we can talk about it. But the PhD and honors scholarships, PhD and master scholarships are highly competitive through the university. Typically, people who already have a research background or get really high marks from their honors are likely to secure them. If you're going to do a master's as your first degree, the university is unlikely to supply it through its usual route, but your supervisor may have avenues for supporting you, and it never hurts to ask. They may have some part-time work that would help keep you going if you needed money for fuel. And it's also a great way to pick up some transferable skills.
Thank you, Kate. Well, we have finished slightly early. Again, I'm sure that you'll have questions that pop into your head. Everyone is relatively approachable here, as you can tell, so feel free to send emails, and there are also links within the email that you got for this actual event. So thanks everyone for your time, and we hope you have a great evening.